ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् ब्रह्मावेन्तमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततत्कतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So let's chant verses number 18 to 21 of chapter number 6. 18 through 21, four verses. Oh, sorry. यदा विनियतं चित्तम् आत्मन्येवावतिष्ठते निःस्पृहः सर्वकामेभ्यः युक्त इत्युच्यते तदा यथा दीपो निवातस्थः नेङ्गते सोपमा स्मृता योगिनो यतचित्तस्य युञ्जतो योगमात्मनः यत्रो परमते चित्तं निरुद्धं योगसेवया यत्र चैवात्मनात्मानं पश्यन्नात्मनि तुष्यति सुखमात्यन्तिकं यत्तत् बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियं वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायं स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः So in the last class, what we had done was to review the Ashtanga Yoga steps given by Acharya Patanjali, Maharshi Patanjali. So we did a kind of like a detour of Yama, Niyama and so on, all the way up to Samadhi. So the topic here in this 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is meditation. The value of meditation, the process of meditation, the effect of meditation, the benefits of meditation, all of those things were being discussed. And so to get a good idea about this is an important thing, because the way we should lead our progress towards an understanding of myself is through uh, is through a quiet meditation upon ourselves. So eventually what needs to happen is that I need to be just alone with myself, and that aspect of myself which is always with me, and even with me is not appropriate. Who's me? But at this point, let's start with me. Let's start with me, with me. So that is the aspect we have to really appreciate. What that means is that normally we have our lives that are associated with things that are impermanent. Impermanent means that they may occupy with you for a while, but they may not last very long. And so that is what our life is all about. In fact, so if we look at there are three aspects to that. So one is that we have our impressions of the outside world through our sense organs. And so for instance, sounds and tastes and experiences. So whenever you say I had you can describe a day and say, so how did your day go? Well, I got up and then, I had a breakfast experience. Then after breakfast, I read a paper experience. So like that, so there are three things that we are involved in. So one is the outside world approaching us through our sense organs. This is one thing. The second one is our own body, and some of the supporting structure of the body, like hunger and blood flow, blood pressure, this, that, or the other, all of that associated with the body. So this is the second thing that we are involved with. So the first one is the approaching of the outside world through my sense organs, so the 5 sense organs. Then the second one is the physical body that I am associated with. The third one is my own mind, my own thoughts. And that's independent of, outside world. You can be in your own thought world and be, daydreaming if you want, thinking, planning, being very possible that you may have some regrets from your previous actions. All of those constitute the mind. So this is how we spend our time during the whole day. And so in one of these three things, really speaking. And so in each one of these three things, there is a degree of impermanence. So if you examine it, you find that it is a continuous flow of things that were not there at some point, was there at some point, and will not be there at some point. Excuse me. So that characterizes all these three things that I'm involved in the whole day. Now, in and through this, there is one thing which is not defined by these three segments. The three segments being the outside world, my body, and my mind. And that is not defined by these three segments and is not impermanent. Not impermanent. It is there in and through everything. In and through all the three stages, in and through the night, in and through the day, in and through all the various experiences. And appears not to be there as a separate entity, because it is mixed up with all these three other things. So when you say my experiences, then you say, okay, these are my experiences, my thoughts, my body. That's it. Anything else you need to talk about? No. And the fact of the matter is that there is something which is independent of these three things. And that is not impermanent, it is unchanging. And on further inquiry, remarkable. Remarkable. Amazing. So amazing, in fact, that it is self-existent, self-aware, independent. Its glory and its remarkability is amazing. And I'm oblivious to it. I can function without knowing it. This is the interesting part. It's as though I don't need it. And yet it is something remarkable. So the sense of meditation is, because I have neglected it and I have been oblivious to it, and I am not cognizant of it for so long, you cannot even imagine how long you've been oblivious to it. Many, many lives. And even if you look at this life, from the day that I was born, you have been neglecting the presence of this all the way through. And so it has been so long that I have neglected it, that for me to recognize it is not permitted by my mind. My mind protests. What are you talking about? How can you be that remarkable? Are you sure? Are you talking to the right people? Is it all mumbo jumbo? What is all this? This is what your mind says. And then you persist in it and so on and so forth, but then the mind also then it manifests itself by saying, I told you. If you have any doubts that, where is it? And so I told you. There's nothing else. Just enjoy life. Just have the experiences. So anyway, this whole process is predictable, and it needs to be culminated in meditation. And the meditation is with yourself without the other three things. The only thing that you employ is your mind. And so this is the topic, the employment of the mind in order to discover your own self which is the main topic of this chapter. The employment of your mind, how to do it. If you say that the mind itself is impermanent, how can an impermanent thing give rise to a permanent thing? How is that possible? This is the definition of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is an important one, and also another very important thing, we will go into this in more detail, is what characterizes the method of doing this. This is what is defined in what is called our sampradaya. As we were briefly discussing in the earlier class also, in this context of the meditation, I will explain it in more detail. This is what is called the Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya. So the word sampradaya means a certain way of thinking, a certain way of understanding. What is it? This will become, we will define this today, we will go over this in more detail today, in the sense of what Bhagavad Gita is talking about the meditation, the role of meditation towards your self-discovery. This is the topic, and so we will clarify some doubts, some misconceptions about the way this is done, and in doing so, sketch out what our sampradaya means. This is an important aspect of this. So, in preparing for this, we went over the 8 steps that Maharshi Patanjali had given us, what is called Ashtanga Yoga. So, we had already done so. And as a quick revision, if you recall, the sampradaya that Advaita Vedanta uses has the following view of the Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. And if you remember this is what we had gone over last week. Our view is that Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, all the way starting with Yama, Niyama, Sadhana, and Pratyahara, etc., up to Dharana, Dhyanam, and Samadhi, all these 8 steps, should be viewed from 2 perspectives. One perspective is sadhya, what is to be seen, and the other perspective is sadhana, how to see it. These are the 2 perspectives. There always is, even in Bhagavad Gita also, at the end of each chapter, as you know, Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So Brahma Vidya is the sadhya, what is to be seen, and Yoga Shastra is the sadhana, on how to see it. What is the goal of life and how to reach it. This is always the 2 aspects of any kind of a teaching, Sampradayik teaching. So our view of the Patanjali Yoga has 2 aspects to that. So one is sadhya and one is sadhana. So there we say that as a sadhana, it is very close to what we hold. And in fact, it has given a certain structure which is better than what our thinking is. Very clearly done. Very intelligent person. This is the sadhana part of it. The preparation. You remember we did the Bahiranga sadhana and Antaranga sadhana, the general preparation and all of that. We did all of that. So we compare and contrast our Vedantic sadhana and import some changes to it based on what the Patanjali's, not changes in the sense it's some practical way of doing that. And we like it. We think it's very good, the way that it is structured and so on. But as a sadhya, we do not accept it. As the final goal, we don't accept it. And why we don't accept it, it is not as though we just believe in us, don't believe in this. That's not it. You should see very clearly why we don't accept it. And so this will come out in today's class also. So what is accepted by the Patanjali Yoga is this. I'm just oversimplifying it a little bit just to make a point, then we will fill it in with more details. That in Patanjali Yoga, thoughtlessness is the key to achieving your identity. This, by the way, is not just theoretical information or anything like this. If you really talk to people, and I do talk to, I get in my life, I really see a lot of people who are doing meditation. I just met one this about 3-4 days ago. And just talked to someone who I've sort of known, but he was asking me what I do, and I was talking to him about that. So then he was talking to me about, he says, I have a meditation guru in Fremont, and I didn't really go into the details of who that is and so on. And he's been doing meditations for a number of years. And he was completely unaware of the Vedantic teaching. I won't say completely, but was generally unaware, unappreciative of it. So this is the view of meditation that people have. And if I had to quiz him more, it would appear like this: we are practicing being thoughtless more and more. Okay, there's this joke that I think Swami Dayanandji had told us this one time. So there was a king that had a daughter, a very beautiful daughter, who was was a young woman, and she was ready to get married. So the king was completely bald at a relatively young age. He was like 45, 50. And he didn't like his baldness. I also have a friend of mine who is very, very wealthy Indian guy. And once I was talking to him, so he was saying that I am trying to get my hair from elsewhere to be transplanted onto my head. So I said, why are you doing that? He says, I don't like my baldness. Don't like myself. So I was telling him, just wear a wig. But what's the big thing? But anyways, he's getting transplanted and all so on and so forth. Sad situation. Anyway, whatever it is. So this king was a bald person, and he didn't like his baldness. So he made a condition. Anyone who can cure my baldness, I will gladly give my daughter as a marriage to him. And then, he was the only one daughter, and so the whole kingdom will give to him. And so a lot of people would come in and they'll give him, take this ointment and do this. Nothing was working. So finally this one guy came in and he said, this is a piece of cake. I've done this so many times. He says, really? Yes. What do I need to do? He says, it's all a matter of meditation. Oh, matter of meditation. Matter of meditation? What do you mean? So he says, here's what you need to do. If you can do for 1 month what I'm asking you to do, your baldness will be gone forever. So he says, really? What is it should I do? He says, okay. You can have any thoughts whatsoever, except for a thought of a potato and an egg, a hen's egg. These two thoughts you should not have. And if you can do this for 1 month, your baldness will be gone. I have done this so many times, and he probably got some false person to give him a testimony, yes, this works. So the king started meditating and so on and so forth. And the first day he thought, what was it he was talking about that I shouldn't think about? Oh, I shouldn't think about that. So he told him, you're right, you're right, but I did violate it because, I was thinking of what is it, but I'm trying, it will come. Next day the same thing. Little longer time he didn't think of it, but he has to think about what is it that he was telling me. So in the end he says, your methods are perfect, I am just not doing it, you please get married to my daughter, and then eventually I will figure it out. Our view of Patanjali Yoga is something like this. You can try to be thoughtless for a while, but if the idea is to be thoughtless in order to be free, it ain't going to happen. Very simple. It's not going to be happen. That just means you always, life will be, and I see this, I'm telling you this Vipassana meditation. So they go through so many things and so on and so forth. And I talked to some friends and they said, oh, it's a very beautiful thing. For 10 days you do this and you're very disciplined and you got to think this, so on and so forth. I had such wonderful days. Then I said, what happened after that? He says, well, I'm back to life, but I'm looking for next year's session again. Keep on doing this session. How long are you going to do that? You're getting older. Is this freedom? This is not freedom, guys. So our view of the Patanjali Yoga is that as a sadhya, it doesn't make any sense. It's not just Patanjali. You have so many people that are just doing meditation without anything. So contrasted to that is the view of meditation that Vedanta teaches. All you have to do is not as though this is better or worse. You should see the role that it has, the truth of it as it has, and what needs to happen. And we may not be able to do it in this just 1 or 2 classes, but I'm just giving you the picture. This is the definition of nididhyasana. And this has to be understood in terms of meditation. So this view of meditation, the way it is being taught, constitutes what is called sampradaya. This is the Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya. So this has to be very clear. We may not get it right away, but we should know exactly what it means. So with that preface, let's go ahead. So, we had finished doing the cursory introduction to the Ashtanga Yoga last week. all the way up to what the samadhi is and so on. So let us now review that and bring it back to the Bhagavad Gita teaching per se. So one review of this. So now we will focus in on the last three steps of Patanjali Yoga, which are dharana, dhyanam, and samadhi. These are the three things. And we will take off from there in defining what is nididhyasana. One other thing in a review of the last week, if you remember, we had given three different aspects of dhyanam. So dhyanam is the second of the three, which is dharana, dhyanam and samadhi. In the dhyanam, we had set three different segments. If you remember, eka rupa dhyanam, aneka rupa dhyanam, and arupa dhyanam. So keep that in mind, and I will incorporate that in the way we were going to look into that. So now, the first one is dharana. Okay, so dharana means the ability to, just 1 second. Talk about one thing. Yeah. So the dharana means the ability to focus on one thing. And it is not that difficult, as we have seen, where people concentrate on one thing effortlessly due to one reason or the other. When you see a child playing a game on the iPhone, my granddaughter was just visiting, living with us for the last couple of days, and now both of them got iPhones. Amazing. And that means that relative disconnect with us. They are much more interested in the joys of iPhone. And at this point in time, I'm very happy it's not emailing and so on and so forth. They are discovering the games that have. My younger one has her own games, my older one has her own games, and they're just playing games. And then you say, hey, what about, us? Can't you want it? Yeah, we'll talk to you in a minute. Talk just a second, I'm just playing. This is dharana. Means they are now totally focused on the game. And if the radio is on, television is on, your grandma is calling them and so on, that is, they're hearing it, but their mind is really... So it's not as though we don't know it. But so dharana just means the ability to cognize something. So what happens is, in the definition as we were talking about earlier, those three things, which is the outside experiences, my body and my thoughts, are focused on anatma. Focused on anatma. Okay? And they're going all over the place. Whatever you're doing, it is anatma. That's what your focus is, your experiences, your regrets, your fears, your hopes, your transactions, the news, the music, everything is anatma, anatma, anatma. So dharana here means, fine, please focus on the Atma. What Atma? That has been predefined. So now you begin to see the differences in the Patanjali Yoga and the Advaita Vedanta. Because, see this very clearly, Patanjali Yoga means you do not focus on the anatma. You focus on the absence of anatma. Any thoughts that come now? Just be quiet. It's very, very possible. Very possible. You can be thoughtless. And in fact, during the deep sleep state, you are totally thoughtless. But being thoughtless doesn't mean you are free. We sleep every night. We've been sleeping every night for the last however old you are. You're still not free. You can be thoughtless. You can be, and normally you're thoughtless after you've had a good meal. You're completely satisfied. Hunger doesn't bother you. Other hopes and plans have not entered you. You're thoughtless for a while. You're still not free. So thoughtlessness is not freedom. We will define what freedom is in a minute, but at least thoughtlessness is not freedom. We all know that. We should know that. So dharana means you need to define what Atma is. And to turn your mind towards that definition of Atma is called dharana in our view. So it's interesting that in the example of my granddaughters playing games on the iPhone, there is something that completely occupies them. See, this is an important thing because it is not nothingness that occupies them. There are some games going on. So there is some changes. The anatma will be different in a minute, but I'm just giving you this fact that being fascinated by something and having a mind which is totally and effortlessly focused on that is dharana. Similarly, What needs to happen is that the Atma needs to be well defined. And the Atma, even though it is, Atma means you, even though it has none of the qualities of Anatma, it has certain aspects that complete the definition of the Atma. For example, it is unborn. So this is just by itself is just a fascinating thing. So just like, for example, in the definition of the gold and the golden ornaments, the ornaments have a date of birth. But the gold does not have a date of birth. So the content of the ornaments does not have a date of birth. It is never born. So the aspect of the Atma, this is the truth. It looks very strange and unlikely. That I'm always there. I was always there. I am always there. I will always be there. So this is an aspect of the Atma. It is not thoughtlessness. It is thoughtlessness. But it is thoughtlessness in a way which leads to freedom. This is one aspect of the Atma. Another aspect of the Atma, for example, I'm just giving you a couple of them just to make a point. I'm not trying to give you a complete definition. Another aspect of the Atma, that it is self-existing. Swatasiddha. Enormous implications. Unbelievable. It is not thoughtlessness. It is thoughtlessness, but in a way that it reveals the true freedom of the Atma. And one that I have to appreciate through thoughts. So that is another aspect of it. So what I'm saying is that there are so many aspects of this. So the basic, if you want to just reduce it down to the basics, there are three aspects: Sat, Chit and Ananda. But itself the Sat, Chit and Ananda has so many other aspects, like I mentioned, Ajam, that is not born, which is also a sub-definition of Satyam. There it is Swatasiddha, is another definition of Satyam. There it is Swatachitta, self-aware. Just look at this. I know, I am aware. It is your own nature. It is not something that comes and goes. Even something comes and goes, you know. That is another aspect of the Atma. That really for any experience you need to be there. You know, I know. I have that experience. No experience can be without I know. No ornament can be there without any gold. That is another aspect of the Atma. That has to be appreciated. So it is not thoughtlessness which is dharana. It is a sense of appreciation of the different aspects of the Atma, which is dharana. So the being absorbed by a game is a good example. There has to be certain aspects of the game that if you have just kind of a silly game that has no beginning, no end, no one will be captivated by it. But chasing, these things that bite and then you have to go and there are snakes and so on, it's a very well-made thing. Then you are fascinated by it. Then you don't have to think about food or grandma or anything else. So this is what dharana means. And so we'll go into more details, but I'm just giving you some introduction to it. Then comes the second one, which is dhyana. So dhyana means the ability to sustain dharana is called dhyana. So it's very possible, this is exactly how it happens, that in the beginning the dharana would mean that, so the dharana in Vedantic sense means dharana of what? So the whole Atma has to be defined first. Different aspects of it has to be defined first. And if you define it, then your attempt to understand it, to even focus on it, is very preliminary. Then the thought of Atma comes. In the meantime, you get lots of other things that are going on. But to slowly to sustain that is now dhyana. So it transitions from dharana to dhyana. Swami Paramarthananda had given a very beautiful example. He said, supposing you have a ticking clock. I don't know if this is making any sound or not, I can't hear it. But supposing there is a ticking clock on the wall, and you are transacting in the middle of the room or with class going on, the classes, and the clock is also ticking. You don't hear the ticking of the clock. Why? Because it is drowned in amongst lots of other sounds. Actually, it is ticking. I can hear it. Now, if everything else, this is what happens when you, supposing you are sleeping in a room. That's why you should not have a ticking clock in your bedroom. Because if you are now shutting off everything, you know what happens? The ticking clock now really is very loud. Tick, tick. Now, loudness has not changed. It hasn't changed. It is the same loudness. It's not as though suddenly at 9 o'clock it starts, beeping more loudly. Exactly, if it's an alarm. It's the same loudness. But what happens is that the loudness becomes more obvious when the other things are not there. Beautiful example. Similarly, what happens is that in dharana, you may have some appreciation of the Atma, especially in a class when we are talking about it, and so on. This is the Shravanam, Mananam, and so on. You can do that. But it is also being drowned by lots of thoughts of anatma. Where is that sound coming from? Then thoughts about what do I have to do next? And then you say, no, I'm talking about the Atma. And you do that for maybe a few seconds. And then suddenly you say, oh my gosh, I forgot to turn this off. It's being drowned. Dharana is now transitioning into dhyana when in the quietness of a meditation and in the relative freedom, just a relative freedom from anatma. Total freedom has not yet come, but you have now practiced not worrying about the past for the time being. As we remember, we have done this, that you give a sankalpa to your mind, that, hey mind, for this period of time, I am taking a sannyasa. I am not involved with relationships, transactions, or anything. That will come later. But during this meditation, I just want to be myself as I am as a person, different from the personality. If you are able to do this successfully over a period of time, then your examination of the Atma becomes more pronounced and sustained. Like the ticking of the clock is very clear and very loud and very persistent. This is what is called dhyana. And the dhyanam is arupa dhyanam. This is just a kind of a detour on the word arupa dhyanam here also would be interesting. So ekarupa dhyanam in the Hindu mythological sense means focusing on one aspect of God, one vigraha. Can be Ganesha, can be Dakshinamurti, just one thing, something that fascinates you. And what happens is, we are told that you will develop a certain fascination for one type of a form. Could be Krishna, could be Rama, could be anything. Anything. You'll just have this is what is called Ekarupa Dhyana. Then the Aneka Rupa Dhyanam it requires more study, more understanding. Means that really speaking, Ishvara is in all forms, not just in one form. And so that is called Aneka Rupa Dhyana. Then even more thinking, more study, more meditation, it leads to Arupa Dhyana. And look at the beauty of the Arupa Dhyana. So in the single Rupa Dhyanam or multiple Rupa Dhyanam, we say Rupa means form, the single form meditation or multiple form meditation, there are always differences. There are differences between people, and even let's look at similarities rather. Forget about differences. Look at similarities. So first of all, when we look at other people, they look very different from me. I am this, you are that, and so on. The reality is 99.99999% of our bodies are similar. There is only superficial differences in skin color, in the gender, very superficial. Really. If you don't believe me, to make a list of things that constitutes a body. Starts with a heart. Everybody has a heart. Lungs, check. Blood vessels, check. Some may have some few more, so on and so forth. All the kidneys, check. Yes, everybody has a kidney. And so on. Then ability to process oxygen, check. If you do all of this, you find 99%, 99.999% is all similar. And in fact, if you were to even extend that to non-humans, it may not be 99 with 19 places of definition, maybe about 16 places of definition. An ant also has a mind, like you and I do. It also has a heart, like you and I do. It also has a blood flow, like you and I do. Their eyes may be different. Their hands may be different. Their crawling one is different. So there is in fact commonality all over. So it all depends on the degree of commonality. In the case of human beings, there is more common. In the case of insects, it's less common, but still quite common. In the case of plants, they also have a living mind. So this is certainly less common, but also common. Is there something which is common to everything in the whole creation? Yes. That is the Arupa Atma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So the Arupa Atma, and that just makes so much sense because that is the fundamental content of everything. You know, I can visualize, for example, supposing you go to a jeweler's shop and there the jeweler is going to have, usually they do, supposing they'll ask you, yes, madam, welcome, what would you like? So the madam says, well, I'm looking for some bangles, golden bangles. Oh, wonderful, good, good, good. So he asks his assistant to please bring out the bangles. He brings out a huge tray which has nothing but bangles, different kinds, different shapes, different designs, and so on and so forth. And anything else? Yes, I'm also looking for some necklaces. Oh, okay. Then he asks the other assistant, please bring out the table from the necklaces. Now she looks at necklaces. This is exactly like this. You know, the humans are one section, insects are another section, and the plants are another section. But you know what? All of them are gold. So there's a person who comes in and he says, I'm interested in buying your entire shop. This guy he has lots of money and a couple of armed guards and so on and so forth. And he says, I want to make an offer. This is offer for what? Your entire gold. That's what I'm interested in. Are you interested in bangles? I don't care. I just want this gold. Okay? And I'm willing to pay for it. Or he might actually do it by, he says, forget it. Just give it to me and I'm not paying anything. Otherwise I'll shoot you. But his drishti is towards gold. So similarly, Arupa Dhyanam is the content of everything. Not just bangles, not just necklaces, not just any other types of ornaments. It is in all ornaments. So this is the Dhyanam that is we talked about. So now we transition to Samadhi. So we had Dharana, Dhyanam, and Samadhi. So these are stages that we will have to go through as we get introduced to our Atma. We are not introduced to it. It is, remember, it is not, it's like saying, as you get introduced to yourself. Atma means yourself. Amazingly, we are myself, but I'm not introduced to it. Amazing. Praptasya prapti. I have something, but I don't understand it. That's how Srishti is. And so, that introduction is not the presence or absence of it. See the difference? This is what our sampradaya is. It is not the absence of thoughts. It is an introduction. So this introduction will take time. Why? Because my mind is completely away from it. It cannot recognize arupam. It can only recognize ekarupam or anekarupam. Because both anekarupam and ekarupam are anatma. So I can pray to a vigraha, but to pray to Ishvara, which is the very content of the whole thing, requires a different way of looking at it. And it's nothing to do with faith or anything like that. It's an understanding that the Atma, that I am really unborn and that I am self-existing. How am I going to know this? It has to be done through teaching, through sustained teaching. And so once that is done, then to internalize it is really what we're talking about. And this is where, if you look at the placement of the meditation in the Bhagavad Gita, it is not in the chapter 1, not in chapter 2, not in chapter 3, not in chapter 4, chapter 5. I'm surprised it is in chapter 6. It should have been at the very end. But there are probably reasons why it is there at that time. And the reason, I think, is very clear, that the 6th chapter is the culmination of the examination of the human being. Is the last one of the examination of the human being. Then 7th through the 8th to the 11th chapter will be the examination of Ishvara. And then the 12th, 13th through the 18th will be to point out the identity between them. So anyway, going back to it, the 6th chapter, which is on meditation, cannot be done until the teaching of the Atma has preceded it. What this means is, now we come to the understanding of the word samadhi. So, dharana, dhyanam, and samadhi. So samadhi is now divided into 2 subsegments called savikalpa samadhi and nirvikalpa samadhi. Right? But this also has to be understood very well, because what samadhi means in the Vedantic sense, remember now we are just talking about not the Ashtanga Yoga, but because in Ashtanga Yoga samadhi means that you have no thoughts whatsoever. at least our understanding of it. But in Vedanta, it means your ability to be absorbed into the vision of the Atma. Your ability to be absorbed in the vision of the Atma is samadhi. It is not thoughtlessness. Thoughtlessness will come much later automatically. But to enter into samadhi, you need to be absorbed in the vision of the Atma. In that sense, is savikalpa versus nirvikalpa can be understood as entering a movie hall and watching a movie. When that happens, imagine if that happens. What happens is, in the beginning, you'll be aware of the fact that you are watching a movie. You are watching a movie, but you are aware of the fact that you are watching a movie. And part of that would be your awareness of where you are in watching the movie. Your seat, how comfortable it is. Who's sitting next to you? Perhaps eating your popcorn. You are aware of yourself. You are also aware of the movie. And as it usually happens, until the movie really starts, especially all these commercials and this, that, or the other, you're really not that absorbed. You're watching around. At that time, the lights are still on. How many people are there? Is anybody making noise or not? Am I comfortable or not? This is what happens. So your awareness of yourself as watching a movie, then the movie starts. And when the movie starts, you're still not absorbed in it. It hasn't really gripped you yet. It's just starting. It is some introduction of, producer's name, this, that, or the other. Then it starts. You're not identifying with the characters yet. It's just something you're watching. You're watching. But while you're watching, your mind is also very aware of yourself, because this is what you are, and you came into it with your self-awareness. I'm coming in, I just paid for the popcorn and my wallet is in, all of those kinds of things. You're sitting there. You're watching the movie and some of those thoughts are still there. Then the movie starts to grip you. You begin to identify with the characters. As it happens, your self-awareness as a separate entity diminishes. You are no longer aware that you are sitting in the chair. Whether you are comfortable or not is not in your mind anymore. You are now, if the movie is good, so I don't go to many of the movies with my wife, but once in a while if I go, if I look at my watch in the middle of the movie, my wife knows that I am not that absorbed in the movie. And she makes me glad, so she says, I don't know, I did the best I can. And if you are truly absorbed in the movie, you don't look at your watch. You become one with it. You identify with somebody. Tears come to your mind, your eyes once in a while, or you laugh, or whatever. This is the distinction between Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi. This is very important to see. It is nothing to do with thoughtlessness, nothing at all. Cannot be farthest from the truth. It means that a person well adept in understanding the Atma, the various aspects of the Atma, as being unborn, being self-existing, of being self-aware, being deathless, being unconnected to everything. So many different aspects to it that I need to fill. And the very source of Ananda. All of this will only be there when you are completely in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Until then, as a Savikalpa Samadhi, you will still be aware that I am separate from this vision of the self. I am just the body-mind sitting here. Like you are watching a movie. You are disconnected, or not disconnected, but you have a separate awareness, a separate existence. That's the word I love. You have a separate existence from that of the movie. But in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, your self-existence, your existence as a jiva disappears into the vision of the Atma. That is the vision of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And it happens. It will happen. It will happen. And at that point, you are fully absorbed in the understanding of the Atma. So there is another, I'm just giving you all the technical definitions associated with this phenomena. Let me give you another definition of the term called, you will see this in the way how this is described. So there is a thing called vritti. So the word vritti means a thought pattern. All thoughts are called vrittis. So what happens is that if I suppose I say apple, there is a vritti in your mind based on your familiarity with both the language and the fruit that you have seen, called apple, that occurs in your mind. If you don't know English at all, that won't happen. If you're familiar with English, then the word apple means something, and if you know that there is a fruit that you've eaten, then the vritti of the apple will come to your mind. And different kind of apples, you can either say kind of like a greenish, yellow, or some red one, whatever. But I'll say apple, then I'll say pear. Now there is a pear vritti. apple vritti. So the form of the fruit is called akara. So you have akara vritti. Akara 1 vritti, akara 2 vritti is called akara vritti. Now, if you have something in front of you, an apple, there also you have an apple vritti. In fact, you should see this very, very well. You should understand this very well. If there is an apple that you are seeing, you know what you are really seeing? You are seeing the vritti of the apple. So the shape of the apple, the form of the apple, the color of the apple enters your eye and forms an image which is now translated into a thought which your brain recognizes as an apple. So this is what is called a akara vritti. Now, this akara vritti is what is called khanda akara vritti. Khanda means that it is separate from all the other objects. Something very peculiar and specific to one object is called khanda akara vritti. So now, all anatmas, all experiences appear to you through khanda akara vrittis. Different kind of experiences. So in the case of the apple, interesting thing happened. You either could see the apple just from my enunciating it, or you can see the apple as presented to you by your sense organs, your eyes. Or you can see an apple when you bring your nose close to it and you can smell the family of apple distinct from the others. All these are called khanda akara vritti. And the khanda akara vritti means that it is impermanent. Then there is the opposite of that called akhanda akara vritti. Akhanda akara vritti means it is still a vritti, but it is not impermanent. So your understanding of the Atma will happen when you have the akhanda akara vritti. And the akhanda akara vritti has 3 different stages, that is dharana, dhyanam, and samadhi, or more accurately, nididhyasanam. To distinguish it from the thoughtless samadhi, it is the Vedantic nididhyasanam. And the nididhyasanam is what is called akhanda akara vritti. And this vritti is different from all the other vrittis because it dispels your darkness about yourself, and it understands and underscores for you that you are independent of time. You are there now, now, now. You are. You're aware. And you have no incompletion of any kind. You are a complete being. So this akhanda akara vritti, once you are absorbed in it, completely devoid of your status as an individual, is what would be called nirvikara samadhi. Nirvikalpa samadhi rather, sorry. Nirvikalpa samadhi. There is no vikalpa. There is no, it's a complete sustaining and absorbing state of yourself. So this is the vision of the Vedantic samadhi. And now from here you can see that in this samadhi there is a lot of prior preparation required, lot of knowledge, lot of classes have to go through, and this is not just thoughtless samadhi as people think out to be. It's a true appreciation of the uninterrupted presence. Another thing of the aspect of it is that it is sarva vyapakaha. It is independent, it's all over. There is no point in time or place that it is not. That is also has to be appreciated. So all that comes from the teaching, slowly, one thing at a time. But it all culminates in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So I will stop here, but then I will connect it to, rather quickly connect it to the verses of the Gita, and make sure that we are not completely, I'm trying to make it conceptual, as you can see, not sticking to individual words of it, but eventually we do need to tether it to the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. So we will go back to number 18 and 19 and see how this is done. As a very simple example, let me just give you number 18 very quickly. I will spend more time. Let's look at the number 18. Yada viniyatam chittam atmani eva avatisthate nisprihaha sarva kamebhyaha yuktaha iti uchyate tada. And then also number 19. Yatha deepaha nivatastha. This is a very famous, you must have seen this many times. Yatha deepo nivastastha nengate sopamasmrita yoginah yata chittasya yunjato yogam atmanah. So in just a quick translation, we'll go into more details in the next class. In the number 18, when the mind has gained a certain composure and remains in the self alone, when one is free from the longing of all the objects of desire, all the anatmas, so to speak, then the person is said to be one who is accomplished. And then a lamp protected from the wind does not tremble. This illustration is cited for the composed mind of the meditator who practices contemplation of the self. So this is the definition by Lord Krishna on the Bhagavad Gita on moving towards nirvikalpa samadhi, as we have discussed before. So we will now connect the detour back to the Gita, and we will do that as a quick, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just to make sure that you are aware of the specific definition of samadhi in the Bhagavad Gita. We will do that next class. So with that, I'll close today's lesson. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Vidyor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Happy to take any questions that you have. Yeah, Greg?
I have a question where you were describing, the results of the work of Patanjali as being this thought-free state, as opposed to the Khande, how did you say that, vritti? Is there something beyond that? Because the vritti is you're describing is a thought.
Is a thought. So what will happen is that technically what happens is that pure ignorance is also without form. Is without form. Like darkness. What the total darkness does is it renders the absence of form. Even though there may be form, but it makes it disappear for a while. Okay? So similarly, and so the ignorance is without form. It's as though it is the seed of some manifestation. And that's exactly what happens at night when we are asleep. All of the form goes, but ignorance of the self is still there. Right? Okay. So what happens is that it is not thoughtlessness per se. It is the absence of ignorance that I aspire to. The absence of ignorance can only occur by akhanda akara vritti. When the akhanda akara vritti occurs, then in addition to the absence of thought, the absence of darkness also goes. So it is not like going to sleep. You are wide awake in a thoughtless form, aware of the fact that you are not just the individual, you are everything. So in the non-Vedantic definition of meditation, of samadhi, what happens is that you may have thoughtlessness, but you still have ignorance. And the ignorance, being a seed, will sprout new forms. And so then you will be upset that the new forms have come, and you would like to be thoughtlessness again. And you are only struggling to remove thoughts when you should be struggling to remove the darkness about the thought. That is the key thing. So with the akhanda akara vritti, initially there will be thoughts, but eventually even the thoughts will also naturally disappear. It's a very beautiful example of that given in this book called Atma Bodha by Shankaracharya. Very beautiful, elsewhere also, but I remember reading it there. So they say that in the wells in India, wells have a habit of gathering a lot of dirt and all kinds of stuff there. And it is not easy to clean the well physically because they are so deep and there's just so much dirt in there. So there is a method of cleaning the dirt in the Indian well water. So there is a powder called Kataka powder. I was not living in any of the villages, so I was not aware of it, but this is what I was told. That there is a powder that is there called Kataka powder. And so what happens is, the powder of course is grainy as a physical form. So you pour a lot of this Kataka powder into the well, and what it does, it clings to all the dirt in the water and makes it heavy and slowly descends down to the bottom of the well, and the Kataka itself gets absorbed in the water and the water remains clean. This is the example. Now let us see how this is important here. So the akhanda akara vritti is like the Kataka powder. So what it does is, it neutralizes false impressions about yourself. This is the biggest problem we have. The problem we have is not that we are not free, but we don't think we are free. And so we think that we are just a body-mind-intellect complex. This is what I have. This is the dirt in the well. And when the akhanda akara vritti, which has been carefully cultivated after years of study and meditation, starts to really remove this false notion that I'm a limited person, itself is a thought, like a Kataka powder. But as it descends, as it gets absorbed in you, that also disappears. And the false impression also disappears. And what is left is a very clear idea of who you really are, which is you are Sarva Vyapakaha Satchitananda, and so on. So this akhanda, so in short, the akhanda akara vritti also is temporary.
Yeah, that was my question.
It's also a temporary. It will also disappear. Yeah.
And so, what they're describing in Patanjali is still is subject to false impressions about.
Correct. Exactly right.
I mean, the basic question, well, who is it that's not free? Sort of, they may not have arrived at an understanding of the actual underlying
I mean, this is where you have to be introduced to the right teaching. This is the teaching very clearly points out that please don't think of it as an alternate view of looking at things. It's not. It's a false view ultimately. It's a good sadhana. It gets you up to a certain point, but then you have to now understand the truth of who you are. And unless the ignorance of who you are is directly confronted and dispelled, it will remain as a force to be reckoned with in one form or the other sooner or later. That cannot be.
I heard a saying, you can't destroy an illusion by substituting another illusion.
Quite right. Exactly. Unless it is directly opposite to that.
Yeah.
So the Kataka powder can be seen as an illusion,
Yeah.
but it should be known to be something. You cannot throw just any other dirt to it.
Yeah.
It has to be direct. The falsity of the other illusion has to be pointed out. Otherwise, it is not effective as such.
Yeah. Thank you.
So at the beginning of the talk, you alluded to with me, and then there is no with also.
Yeah.
Is that the same as Akhandakara Vritti?
Yes, in a way, yeah, I think so. So the with me means that you have to see the presence of the Atma as though you are just witnessing it as a separate entity. Very much like the example of watching a movie. So you want to be absorbed in the vision of the movie, but at that point you are with the movie, but you are still aware of the fact where you are sitting and so on. But once in that, it's not a perfect example, but in that example, when you are fully absorbed in the movie, as though you are, if there is something wrong being done to a woman by a man, then you identify with that woman as though you are that also. There, that with the movie disappears and you become part of the movie in that sense. Ultimately, I think the thing that has personally for me, which has been very beneficial, and I will dwell on it as we go on more, is that you have to see yourself as the reflection of Ishvara. Right now, you think you are it. In fact, you are looking at the reflection of Ishvara. And Ishvara is the Ribimba. You are the Pratibimba. And to know that I am not the Bimba, I am the Pratibimba. I am an image on the mirror. I am a false person that looks like the real one. This is the ahankara. That is really been very beneficial to me. And it wasn't as though, sometimes, I'm critical of the earlier teachers, that why didn't they teach me? They probably taught me, but I never really understood it. That's much more realistic, I think. But now that I am beginning to grasp, to grab on to the subtleties of it, then the same issues now become very obvious to me. And that is really, yeah.
So the difficulty is, it seems to have a beginning.
What seems to have a beginning?
The Akhandakara Vritti.
Yeah, the Akhanda Akara Vritti may have a beginning. May have a beginning. That's true. That is very possible. For a person, for a given person, even though it may not have a beginning throughout, but just like, for example, let's take a simple example of a wave of an ocean. The recognition that I am not just a wave, I am the water, that recognition has a beginning. It has a beginning. But that I am the whole water, never subject to being to disappear, that was always the case. But the recognition of that has a beginning. So Akhanda Akara Vritti, yes, of course it has a beginning for me. Because the other waves may be happy, but I am not happy. Right now I am feeling that I am very vulnerable. And that vulnerability, the removal of that does have a beginning. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that next Saturday, I think I mentioned that in the last class, we'll have a special session just to introduce the new year. So downstairs in the auditorium, we just changed the time from 8:30 to 10:30. There will be a common session from 8:30 to 10:30, and we will do a small puja, we will do a meditation, and then a small talk. And so there will be not a separate Mandukya class or the Bhagavad Gita class. And so you can come in from the main door, not from the side door, because the auditorium is right next to the main door on the ground floor. So I will send you an email today with all the details. So next Saturday, the 5th, we will have a beginning of the year class. Okay? Thank you.